Before we do move on, though, Ellie, we did have some news that we talked about on the website this week. You put out a blog about it. If you want to touch a little more on our first silly season domino that fell this week.
Yep, I mean, you couldn't put it any more succinctly there. McNasty's on the move. He's going to leave the Front Row Motorsports number 34 and will slide into the Spire Motorsports number 71. Spire going to keep that third team. Zane Smith, he'll go somewhere else. McNasty going to drive for Spire. There, it was kind of surprising. There had been rumors coming out that maybe he would leave, that he had talked to some other teams last year.
Yeah.
But he was one of the longer tenured guys in the series. He'd been there 7 seasons, and now will take his talents over to Spire.
It seems like it's just a stability thing. We always know Front Row never really signs those long-term deals. They're kind of just slinging out one-year contracts year after year. And so, you can't blame him. Spire obviously has some funding that they're getting as well, so they can pay someone like Michael McDowell. And it speaks to them, man. And I'm not really sure how good that Spire equipment is. Like Carson Hocevar has kind of drove the wheels off it. And if it is that good, then that's great. And I think Michael McDowell could be a factor next year. But then there's Corey LaJoie, who's underperformed all year, and Zane Smith, who's been arguably the worst full-time guy. But you just don't know if that's the driver of the car. But McDowell's probably always outran his equipment,
Yeah, and bringing a guy like McDowell in, I can't compare their two driving careers, but it's almost like how Kurt Busch, where every team he went to in his latter career, he made that equipment better. Getting a veteran driver in there, obviously McDowell, not a Cup champion, not nearly as many wins, but he knows how to drive a race car. I mean, we've seen it over the last couple of years. Really brought Front Row up. I mean, they'd won at Talladega with David Reagan. They put together some good runs, all right, but he really, he brought that team into a better era to being one of the top Ford teams. And that's what Spire is going to be hoping for, is that he can kind of pick out some of those things. Because LaJoie's a veteran, but he hasn't been around quite as long. He doesn't have the same racecraft. And just frankly, maybe not even as much talent as McDowell has, at least developed through now. So getting a guy like that in, you've got your traditional veteran, you've got your performing veteran, and you've got your hot-performing young stud in Carson Hocevar. So Spire could be a team that continues on the upswing. And listen, I'm proud of these guys. If you go back to some of these shows 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I was like, these guys suck. They're just collecting money. The cars are shit. But they had to build up some of that money to go out there, get charters, get more charters, get guys like McDowell in the door. Now it's they just keep making moves that help me take them very seriously as a race team. And that's fun, because the more serious and good teams we have in the garage, the better the racing is going to be.
You're getting a guy like Michael McDowell, who legitimately has a shot to win about 6 or 7 different times a year when you factor in all the road courses, the super speedways. He's arguably an A- super speedway racer. Likes to throw some blocks at the end of races, but you got to do that at times. And arguably an A- to A road course racer as well. And he can still kind of get it done in the 1.5 miles. So we saw it last week at Kansas. He had a top 10. And when we were at Dover and we talked to him a couple weeks ago, he had a really good qualifying run there. He's getting the most out of his equipment. So I think he'll do the same. And shout out Spire for actually putting together a good organization here. And so I'm excited all the way around. And I think the only other question mark I'd like to ask you is where does this leave Front Row? What does Front Row do next, in your opinion?
Yeah, so that's the crazy part. McDowell jumping off of that ship for the stability, getting the multi-year deal. He's locked himself in. What is not locked in is what's going to happen to Front Row and what could happen to the Ford program as a whole, because the rumors are rampant now about Stewart-Haas Racing. There have been thoughts maybe they would downsize. Now it's been brought up that maybe their entire operation is on the market. They may, if they get a track house buying out Ganassi type of offer, you may not see Stewart-Haas in the same form. Maybe Stewart-Haas and Front Row would merge or something. If we were a show that didn't have to focus on betting and we could do a whole bunch of silly season talk, we could throw on the tinfoil hats and certainly talk about it all night. But really, we don't know what's going to happen there. That's the crazy part. McDowell did not want to wait around. He gets the Spire offer. He's like, I'm going to lock myself in here. He's earned it. He drove the shitty start and park cars, brought himself up, wins the Daytona 500, gets that second win to really solidify you as not being a fluke in the Cup Series. Now he's in a stable spot for potentially the rest of his career.
I fucking love McNasty. Shout out McNasty. I'll definitely be repping some 71 gear once he gets over there.